Next month, as in October, another resupply spacecraft will become operational and will dock with the International Space Station. But unlike any of the spacecraft that are currently resupplying the ISS, this one was not built by the Russians or the Americans, but rather was built by the Japanese. Now, this is not the first time that the Japanese have had a resupply ship for the ISS, but it has been a very long time since a Japanese ship has docked with this space station. So what makes this so special, and why hasn't the Western media been talking about it at all? I mean, is the HTV-X anything unusual, anything spectacular, or is it just a bit of an uglier cargo Dragon that really can't compete with the bleeding edge technology that SpaceX uses to resupply the ISS? We're going to find all of this out, including some exclusive information from the IAC conference, coming at you right now. Good evening, viewers, and welcome to a special bulletin here on the Angry Astronaut. We're going to be talking about a new Japanese spacecraft, the HTVX, that's been talked about extensively for years now. Japan has been pushing this particular spacecraft and what it might represent to their future ambitions in low Earth orbit for quite some time, but I didn't realize just how close we were to an actual launch until a couple of days ago. It's night 2, by the way, of the IAC conference, and let me go ahead and catch you up for those of you who are unfamiliar with just the basics of what has happened to me as of late. There have been a lot of things that have really put my that's just made me very frightened of my prospects for the future as to whether or not I'm going to be able to continue making a living doing what I do. I was briefly demonetized, had nothing to do with anything my channel did. It was actually due to a group of channels that I was associated with, and that's a relationship I intend to break off. I'm not going to get into that, but I was demonetized for about 24 hours with no clear idea as to whether or not I was ever going to get that back. During that time, I made no money. I couldn't make any content. Essentially, YouTube just neutered my channel to make sure that I would make no money off of it until the issue was resolved, which it was. And near as I can tell, it was a mistake, but I haven't gotten a straight explanation as to what happened there. And then on top of that, about 36 hours ago, after I returned a hire car with a minor amount of damage to the rear fender, the Enterprise Rent-A-Car ripped 5,000 Australian dollars, 3,400 US dollars out of my account. Money that they have yet to return, even though they haven't been able to really justify why they did it. But apparently that is a standard policy. If you don't take their exorbitant insurance, which, by the way, given that I had a 2-week rental, there was no way that I was going to be able to afford to pay all of that extra money for their insurance. So since I didn't take that, if there's any damage to the car at all, they pull 5,000 Australian dollars out of your account and keep that money until they know exactly how much the repair is going to cost, and then they refund you whatever the difference is how the story works. So in any event, there may be some hope on that front, but as of right now, it's, as far as my situation is concerned, it doesn't matter because of you guys. You really saved me. You pulled my fat out of the fire by donating to record levels. I can't believe the amount of support that I got. I'm going to use that support to create a lot of new content for you folks. I may even travel to Japan, where there's an upcoming launch, which I'm talking about here in this video. In any event, I'm just overwhelmed, just stunned by the enormous amount of support that I received. All I can say is the only reason that I've been able to attend this conference, to get anything done that I had planned to do on this trip with this particular conference, is because of you guys. If it wasn't for you, I would instead have to get a plane ticket from a family member and leave immediately, returning to the United States and basically living with my father until I could get my finances back in order. The blow that Enterprise dealt me was that severe. So, in any event, all of that having been said, thank you, thank you, thank you. Now let's go ahead and talk about HTVX. And I'm sure the vast majority of you have never heard of this spacecraft, but Mitsubishi Heavy Industries has been working on this spacecraft for some time. Japan actually had another resupply craft called the HTV years ago, but they abandoned it. And really, SpaceX and the Cygnus and the Progress resupply ship, they've been handling all of the resupply of the International Space Station since then. Before, the Europeans and the Japanese also contributed to the resupply of the ISS. But for one reason or another, they stopped doing that, leaving it all in the hands of the Russians and the United States. And thank God, that seems to be changing, and quite dramatically. And what I didn't know and what I found out at IAC today when I had an opportunity to speak to an engineer from JAXA, an engineer responsible for the H3 rocket, the new rocket that started off not quite so auspiciously with a failed first flight, which was carrying a very expensive satellite, by the way. It was a devastating blow to Mitsubishi Heavy Industries and to JAXA. But you know what? They bounced back, and they've had several flights since then, all of which have gone flawlessly. And now they're about to fly this new spacecraft. And not only is this a test flight of the spacecraft, it actually has thousands of kilograms of supplies on board, and it's going to dock with the International Space Station. Well, not technically dock, similar to the Cygnus. It's going to be grappled by the Canadarm, which in my opinion is the safest way for the ISS to interact with other spacecraft. I'm still not really all that comfortable with automated systems and automated propulsion systems pushing a spacecraft into dock with an airlock, a docking berth. I'm still not sure if that's the safest way to be approaching a space station. I like the Canadarm grappling procedure with an actual astronaut responsible for making it happen. But regardless, all of this is going to be taking place in October. Really, really soon. We're talking just over 3 weeks from now. Japan will be launching this brand new spacecraft. And not only is this significant in the fact that Japan is getting back in the game, this thing has immense cargo capacity, far more cargo capacity than the Cargo Dragon does. And even though it's not reusable, I mean, that's the best way to go up against a reusable spacecraft, is to make your bang for the buck, the amount of cargo you're going to deliver in a single launch, so much more than the reusable spacecraft is delivering. That's your way to compete and to still, as far as cost is concerned, level things out with the competition. It's also worth keeping in mind, by the way, that even though Cargo Dragon is technically reusable, there's a huge chunk of it that isn't, the so-called trunk, which contains the vast majority of the cargo, the unpressurized cargo. The trunk burns up in the atmosphere. It's only the pressurized section that has a heat shield and survives. So even the Cargo Dragon is not 100% reusable, which gives HTVX an even better chance of competing. So we're going to learn all about this spacecraft, what it can do, its new capabilities, and what this is going to mean for JAXA and also for future space stations. Exciting stuff as a result of the IAC conference, which you guys made possible, coming at you right now. All right, folks, here an unexpected interview with JAXA, an engineer here at JAXA, talking about the H3. But not only that, we're talking about the HTVX. I had no idea that this was going up. Can you tell us a little bit about it right now, please?
Yes, next H3 mission is for HTVX, October 21st.
So as much as I would like to let you listen to Mr. Kanakubo relate information about this mission, unfortunately, I wasn't really ready for an interview in the first few hours of the conference, so I didn't have proper audio. But what he's telling us here is that the H-3 rocket that's going to be taking this spacecraft up into orbit has 2 main engines together with 4 solid rocket boosters. That's the maximum number of SRBs that this rocket is supposed to carry. Just to be clear, the H-3 is a brand new rocket in Mitsubishi Heavy Industries' arsenal. It's capable of carrying more payload to orbit or to more faraway destinations than any previous rocket built by Japan. It's powered by 2 or 3 LE9 engines, and what the LE9 is an engine that runs off of liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen, so not very different from the SLS in terms of the design, utilizing less powerful but longer ISP engines in order to provide the main thrust, along with 4 solid rocket boosters as well to give it the extra punch. Now, this particular combination of solid rocket boosters and main engines give H-3 2.6 million pounds worth of thrust, as opposed to Falcon 9, which gets about 1.7 million pounds of thrust at sea level, meaning that H-3 probably can carry substantially more payload, not only to low Earth orbit, but also to much higher orbits than Falcon 9 can, but it certainly can't compete with things like Falcon Heavy. All of that being said, H-3 and this particular combination will be what is tossing the HTVX spacecraft into orbit. So what about HTVX? What makes it so special? What makes it a better spacecraft, at least on some levels, as its competition? Well, this is a new spacecraft, as I mentioned before, that replaces what is called the H2 Transfer Vehicle, or HTV. Once again, it's designed to deliver payloads up to the International Space Station, although the Voyager company, who is building the Starlab space station in conjunction with Airbus, it's a largely European space station, but they have developed an extremely strong relationship with Mitsubishi Heavy Industries for future resupply of the Starlab space station. Now, why would they build this relationship above all others? Why would they have a stronger relationship with Mitsubishi Heavy Industries than perhaps with SpaceX? Well, one of the most important considerations is that HTVX can carry an immense amount of pressurized cargo, 78 cubic meters worth of pressurized cargo. By way of comparison, Cargo Dragon can only carry 9.3 cubic meters of pressurized cargo. That's 8 times the capacity. And not only that, HTVX can carry a comparable amount of unpressurized cargo to what Cargo Dragon can carry as well. How is this possible? How does JAXA and Mitsubishi Heavy Industries make all of this work? Well, it's because HTVX is a multi-modular spacecraft, unlike the Cargo Dragon. That is to say, it has 3 modules rather than 2. It has a 3.8 meter long unpressurized cargo module, which is a hollow cylinder with internal shelving. This increases the volume available for unpressurized cargo compared to the previous module. Also, it has a 2.7 meter long central service module. Now, this is what makes HTVX very different indeed, because it has, as I said, 3 different modules. It has 2 cargo modules and 1 service module, whereas the vast majority of resupply ships out there have only 1 cargo module and 1 service module. But in any event, the center service module is capable of independent operation. It has 2 solar panel arrays generating 1 kilowatt worth of power, which is 5 times the amount of the original HTV, and batteries with a peak output of 3 kilowatts, up from 2 kilowatts with the previous version. Communications are also upgraded with a 1 megabit per second link compared to only 8 kilobits with the previous spacecraft. However, HTVX lacks a main engine and instead uses a ring of RCS thrusters. That being the case, unlike Dragon, unlike Cygnus, and unlike Progress, this spacecraft will never be able to reboost the ISS into a higher orbit. So that's a significant difference and a significant advantage for Dragon and just about all the other cargo modules that dock with ISS. And then finally, it has this 3.5 meter long pressurized logistics module. Now that's similar to the previous module, but again, can be dedicated entirely to pressurized logistics, much bigger than what Cargo Dragon has. So the total length of this spacecraft is 6.2 meters or 10 meters with the unpressurized cargo module fitted. And to give you a visual idea of how much of a difference all of this makes, look at HTVX on the far left of this diagram compared to just about every other cargo resupply spacecraft that docks with space stations today. This thing is much bigger than any of the Dragon versions and carries more cargo even than the extended version of the Cygnus. It is an absolutely massive cargo ship. Only the Chinese Tianzhou, which doesn't dock with the ISS, by the way, can begin to compare with it size-wise. And once again, even though this thing isn't reusable, if you can carry a lot more cargo up to orbit in a single launch, it is the launch costs that really contribute mostly to the overall cost of the mission, not the cost of the spaceship. And also keep in mind that no spaceship is 100% reusable anyway. The Dragon loses the vast majority of its cargo space in the atmosphere as well. So yeah, HTVX is a big step up for Mitsubishi Heavy Industries and JAXA, a highly competitive spacecraft, assuming that it's actually successful on this maiden flight. Will it be? So yeah, exciting stuff. HTVX, nothing fancy, nothing spectacular, not reusable. I can definitely see a lot of people saying that it's not the way things should be going. Reusability should be the future of all of our spacecraft, but at the same time, as I mentioned before, Dragon isn't 100% reusable either. And if this spacecraft can deliver a whole lot of more bang for the buck, it can definitely remain competitive. And also, as I mentioned in the video, as long as the cargo volume is quite enormous and therefore is capable of carrying big, bulky pieces of cargo that Dragon cannot carry, this is going to make this spacecraft extremely useful as time goes on. And I think that's the reason that we have a relationship now with Starlab and Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. It's actually one of the strongest relationships that Starlab and Voyager and Airbus, everybody responsible for that space station, is with Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. HTVX is a big part of the resupply plan for that new space station, so I'm really excited to see what happens. However, things could definitely take a turn for the worst here. This spacecraft might fail on its first flight. It's brand new. It's a prototype, and it could run into problems. And especially, this thing's going to be maneuvering very close to the ISS. So that's always a scary moment for NASA, for ESA, for the Russians, for everybody that's involved with this space station, especially considering that humans are on board. And I'm going to do everything I possibly can to bring this coverage to you live. And also, given the enormous amount of support that I just got, I'm going to try to bring that H3 launch from Japan. I'm going to see whether or not I might be able to bring you live coverage of that event. So stay tuned. Thanks again for watching and for everything you do. And until next time. Stay angry about space.